Hey guys, I want to make a video kind of just describing some of my experiences traveling because I've got quite a bit of traveling experience now and experience living abroad. I'm American and I'm 31 years old. I grew up in the US, mostly in Pennsylvania, and my first experience living abroad was in France when I was 13, 14 years old in 2004. And I lived there for 2 years. My family lived there for 2 years, and that was my first experience outside of the U.S. basically. Um, and I think that's what really inspired me to want to go abroad and live abroad. So, after I graduated college in 2014, I graduated with a philosophy bachelor's degree, and I moved to China when I was 23, and I lived there for 4.5 years. And I lived in the city of Xi'an. That's spelled Xian. Um, it's a city famous for the terracotta warriors. So I lived there for 4.5 years, and then I moved to Taiwan in 2020, and lived there for 6 months. I went back to the U.S. I lived in California for 1 year, and worked as a jewelry salesperson there. When I was in China, I was an English teacher. And then I moved to Mexico City in Mexico and taught English online, and I lived there for 1 year. And then I was in Costa Rica for 3 months, continued to teach English online, but then I started doing it freelance. And then my most recent adventure was in Ecuador, and I was in Ecuador, Quito, Ecuador, for 6 months. So I've lived abroad now for, I'm not sure how many years that would be. So that's 5 years in China, 2 years in France, um, uh, 1 year in Mexico, plus 9 months. So that would be 8 years and 9 months, almost 9 years. Um, if you exclude my experience in France, then it would be 6 years and 9 months, so almost 7 years as an adult, almost 7 years of living abroad. So I wanted to just tell you some things that I've learned from living abroad in this video, um, and also tell you about which places were the best for skating and which places I enjoyed the most for skateboarding. Um, so first of all, in China, there's a lot of good skate spots in China, because in China they don't really have the that culture of no skateboarding allowed like it is in Western countries. So you can skate in almost any place, and you won't get kicked out as quickly as you would if you're in a Western country. Um, a lot of the ground is also very smooth, so it's good for skating. The skate scene is not that big, but it's growing in China. Um, Taiwan was really fun. The cultures of Taiwan and China are totally different. Not to mention the governments are totally different. They have different currency. They both speak Chinese, but they speak it with different dialect. The Taiwanese use the traditional Chinese characters, and the Chinese use simplified Chinese characters. Um, so the Taiwanese, they like to preserve a lot of that ancient Chinese culture. Um, as far as the food, I liked the food in China more, to be honest, in Xi'an. So Xi'an, China, is in the north of China, and they're very famous for their noodles. They are very famous for their beef noodles. In Chinese, it's niu rou mian. They also have rou jia mo. They have liang pi. They have uh, what's it called? It's like this yang rou pao mo is another one, which is kind of like a soup with pieces of bread and lamb with noodles. They have really good noodles in China because all of it is homemade. It's all fresh. In Taiwan, I felt like it was more of a mixture, kind of a melting pot of cultures between Japan and China. So I didn't feel like the food was as authentic in Taiwan. They had amazing Japanese food. They had also good Chinese food, but overall, I liked the food in Xi'an more. I liked the dishes. They have like rice and various dishes in China. Very popular. You can see those kinds of restaurants, those kinds of rice restaurants all over the place, as well as noodle restaurants, and they're very cheap. Like for a big bowl of fresh noodles, it would be around 15 RMB, which would be $2. So pretty cheap. Xi'an was also really cheap. I had an apartment there, and I want to say it was only like $150. I remember it was 1,300 RMB. Let me see how much that converts to. $180. So yeah, it was $180 for my apartment in Xi'an, and it was in the center of the city. It wasn't anything super special, but it did have a kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, a window. So it was on the sixth floor of a high-rise building. Um, anyways, a lot of things were more convenient in China than they were in Taiwan, and they were cheaper in China also. But of course, it depends on the city that you go to. Xi'an is a second tier city. It's not a first tier city like Shanghai or Beijing, so it's cheaper. I prefer those second tier cities in China more than the first tier. Um, but Taiwan felt more natural. They preserved nature more, and there was also more freedom in Taiwan, not only politically and in terms of speech, but also in the natural aspect of Taiwan. They just didn't have the they just didn't restrict a lot of the different parks and rivers and natural places in the city. They kind of let it grow freely in Taiwan, and it just felt like a lot more fresh. The sky was blue in Taiwan, and in China, because of all the pollution, it wasn't. It was very rare that you would have blue skies. So it was just more natural and cleaner in Taiwan. The atmosphere was more beautiful in Taiwan for sure. As far as the people in Taiwan were more polite, but the people in they weren't necessarily always friendly, but it's hard to say which place was friendlier. I would say that the Taiwanese were definitely more polite. Um, but I met a lot of friendly people in both places. Um, and so after I left Taiwan after 6 months, I was in California for a year selling jewelry at a jewelry store, and then I went back to teaching English online, and I moved to Mexico City. And one of the things that you learn from traveling is um, how to be careful and how to be aware of your surroundings. And I feel like I didn't really learn that until I lived in Ecuador most recently, from January 2023 to this past July 2023. Um, and the reason for that was because I got attacked when I was in Ecuador, and I also got robbed at gunpoint in Quito, Ecuador. So I felt like the city of Quito was pretty dangerous, and I definitely learned how to always be looking over my shoulder, especially if I feel that the area is, a high risk or a high crime. If there's any suspicious activity, I've definitely kind of developed that sort of sixth sense. Um, So I felt like that. I felt like I learned how to be very careful in Ecuador, and that was a valuable skill of how to just be cautious and aware of your surroundings. Mexico City, I didn't really experience that. I felt like Mexico City was pretty safe in general. That was my experience. Mexico City was also really good for skateboarding. There's a place called Bellas Artes in uh, it's near the historical center, I think. Anyways, it's called Bellas Artes in Mexico City. Really big park that has perfectly smooth ground, and there's some really good skate spots throughout the city. Um, and Costa Rica, I was there for 3 months, and I was in Capos, which is a small town by the ocean, for 2 months, and then I was in Heredia for 1 month, which is near the capital, San Jose. I loved the weather in Heredia. It was just perfect weather. It was not too hot, but in Capos it was really hot. So I didn't like the people that much in Costa Rica. I didn't really feel like they were very friendly or very polite. But not all of them. Of course, some of them were nice, but generally speaking, compared to Mexico, I felt like the people were very friendly in Mexico. So they were maybe one of the friendliest people I've met, actually, in Mexico City. In Ecuador, the skate park that I went to was at Carolina Park, and the skaters there are very, very friendly. I got along with them really well and connected immediately, and even now some of them are my best friends. But you definitely want to be careful in Quito. So um, uh, yeah, so I loved the skate park in Carolina Park, but I didn't think that there was a lot of good skate spots in Ecuador. And in Costa Rica either, I didn't feel like there was a lot of skate spots. But the skate park in Heredia, there was a skate park called Walmart Skate Park in Heredia, and that was a really fun skate park. And the people there were very friendly also. Um, and uh, yeah, in Mexico City, I went to a skate park called Jardín del Arte, and that was in the district of San Rafael. It was a very safe neighborhood. I think a little more expensive, but very nice area. Really fun skate park. The people at Jardín del Arte, really nice, clean, natural environment. Um, More young people go there, more teenagers, not as many um, older skaters go there to skate. Anyways, uh, I'm kind of just giving all this information randomly. So hopefully this isn't too boring of a video to watch. um, and then yeah, after Ecuador, I moved to Colombia, and I'm in Colombia now. So I'm in a small town called Envigado. It's right beside Medellin. Um, and so far, my experience here has been good. Uh, I honestly haven't felt like I've connected as easily with the people here. Not really sure why. Um, but when I was in Ecuador in Quito, I just connected with the skaters at the skate park immediately. Like I made so many friends so quickly in Quito, but I haven't really felt like I've made a lot of friends here, and haven't it hasn't been the same. I've made a couple friends, but yeah, not a lot, not like it was in Quito. I don't know if it's just my personality. Certain personalities connect with different people. Just depends on the person, but um, and I also feel like Quito was cheaper than this city that I'm in now, than Envigado and Medellin. I felt like it was cheaper in Quito also, and the food was also better. So there's definitely some better things that I liked about about Quito, Ecuador, but here in Envigado, it's very safe. I felt like it's much safer here than it was in Quito, Ecuador. So, yeah, so those are just a couple of the things that I've learned and things that I wanted to talk about from my travels. There's a lot more to talk about, but maybe I'll talk about those things in other videos. So, yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions.